unknown, a land of perpetual ice and snow, larger than the United States and Europe combined. The least explored section of the Earth, the Antarctic. The Antarctic is a riddle. No man can tell what vast riches are hidden in these mountain ranges. Silver and gold, perhaps uranium. Beneath this blanket of snow may lie the great oil fields of the future. And the answer to the riddle of whether Antarctica is a continent or two great islands separated by a channel beneath the polar ice cap. Deep in this bitter vortex of wind and snow may be found the secret of weather. The Antarctic has been invaded by adventurous men several times. The last in 1939, when a little band of scientists and Navy men literally carved their own community out of ice and snow. Little America. Under the guidance of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, their organizer-in-chief, the group lived for a year and a half, defying the incredible cold of the long winter, when the temperature sometimes dropped to 70 degrees below zero. And even the Arctic-bred huskies were snowbound. Safe in the haven they had built, the men defeated boredom by preparing for the milder weather of the Antarctic spring. When they went to work trying out new equipment, making scientific tests of the ice chill, unearthing the Antarctic secrets by plane and sled, boldly challenging the unknown. Like Byrd, who in 1935 lived a dangerous, solitary life completely isolated near the South Pole for 4.5 months. It was these pioneers, with their now outdated equipment, the obsolete planes and old-fashioned whaling vessels, who blazed the way for Operation High Jump, the great expedition of 1946-47. Admiral Byrd was officer in charge of the project, while another polar veteran commanded Task Force 68, Rear Admiral Richard H. Cruzen. Under their command was an impressive armada of 13 ships, manned by 4,000 men, generously equipped with a variety of planes, ranging in size from great amphibian mariners to nimble bee-like helicopters, all specially prepared for cold weather flight. The Navy's mission was not only to explore, but also to train men and test ships and equipment in cold weather operations. There was radar to scan the icebergs, and racks of miraculous trimetragon cameras. When plane-borne, they would shoot the barren ice deserts from horizon to horizon. And there were dogs and sleds. For under extreme weather conditions, the oldest means of Antarctic transportation was still the most dependable. So selected huskies were sent to special kennels in New Hampshire for training, while craftsmen kept their fingers nimble for rigging sleds. It was only after exhaustive preparations that Admiral Byrd and his aides made their final checkup and gave the signal to go. In December 1946, the first units slowly moved out to sea. Several of these men were veterans of previous expeditions. Yet the lure of the unknown had drawn them to volunteer again. Even to the sailor, for whom the sea is an old story, there is adventure in the oceans at the end of the world. Fun and excitement in passing under the torrid sun of the equator. Suddenly, the outposts of the polar sea came into sight. Great icebergs, massive as forts, guarding the lonely approaches to Antarctica. But there was no challenge from them. The only living things to be seen were schools of frolicking whales. Undisturbed by the man-made whale, the submarine Senate that rose among them. Or seals that lazily refused to move from their bed of ice as the intruders passed them by. As the ships penetrated the great ice pack that stood between them and Little America, they moved slowly, cautiously through the silent, hostile ice. Task Force Commander Admiral Cruzen soared skyward repeatedly to reconnoiter the danger ahead and on all sides. Here, the ice no longer floated in giant fragments that could be skirted, but had joined and stretched into vast white prairies that encroached on every foot of open water, and on the ships for whom open water meant movement and safety. Ahead of the pack plunged the Coast Guard icebreaker North Wind, striving to keep an open lane through the frozen waters, but found it was like cutting through a jungle that opened ahead and silently closed in behind. First victim was the USS Mount Olympus, fixed motionless by the ice as though settled in a frigid pool of glue. This was the moment for the big north wind, the plunging back of the expedition team to prove its mettle. Captain Charles W. Thomas called the play. And into the stiff, resisting shield of ice it cracked, slashing into it and bearing down, like a wrestler and fencer combined. Hacking, crushing, grinding, till the trap was shattered and the victim freed. But the relentless ice insisted on its prey, the submarine Senate, twice frozen in and twice released. Its frail skin constantly menaced by ice pressure, its nose crushed, the Senate was ordered to give up and turn homeward. The rest of the Argosy pushed on, right up to the ice barrier of the Ross Sea shelf, behind which lay the Bay of Whales and Little America. The only entrance was through a miraculous canyon in the ice barrier, a narrow gap no more than 400 yards wide and slowly closing every day. Through this, the ships disappeared, one by one, creeping between giant jaws of ice that loomed threateningly off either bow. A harmless threat, though, for all emerged without mishap into the Bay of Whales. Ahead was a landfall of solid ice and Little America. Navy and Marine cameramen scrambled to be the first ashore, only to find that the invisible man had beaten them to it. Then came the mooring parties. Here they're making fast the cargo ship Merrick by means of a so-called dead man, a huge timber embedded in a deep hole, locked fast by water, which instantly freezes it to the ice, then filled in and packed hard, making a rock-like anchorage. Another group negotiates for squatters' rights with the local landlords, who are, it seems, somewhat evasive, or maybe just cold to the idea of doing business. The most dramatic task of that first day falls to a small scouting party charged with looking into the permanent installations of Little America left behind in 1941. They are easily found. Although many blizzards have dropped their tons of snow on those buildings, the chimneys and ventilators still thrust above the snow, lonely guardians of the base. It's more difficult to locate an entrance. That elaborate detecting device, an old-fashioned shovel, is brought into play, and a way in is soon found. Marine Captain Vernon D. Boyd, a veteran of the last expedition, makes the first entry. The only man in the world to imitate Santa Claus in a chimney that's underground. Well, maybe it's below ground because this is the South and not the North Pole. It is 6 years since a living thing has moved through that passage. When Captain Boyd disappears, the exploring party waits tensely for a sign from below. There it is, the signal that the main entrance has been discovered. Captain Boyd reappears to announce that the Antarctic's deep freezing has preserved everything perfectly. But the old camp is left untouched. Task Force 68 unloads its own supplies, paced by the Navy's tireless sea beams. Dog teams pitch in to do their bit. But the heavy hauling is done by weasels and tractors. Crevasses are bridged by steel mats, supported by beams flung across the gap. Precious food caches are laid in, with windbreaks of solid ice to protect them. And one of the inevitable landlords sitting by, puzzled, no doubt, at this new technique of prefabricated housing. The photographers, too, quickly set up their headquarters. As the tent city, strongly rigged against icy blasts, rises swiftly. As soon as the signal comes from Little America that all is ready, 6 huge Douglas transports, known to the Navy as R-4Ds, make jet assist takeoffs from the USS Philippine Sea, 600 miles to the north. The largest aircraft ever to leave a carrier's flight deck. They come roaring onto a ready-made landing field at Little America. One of their passengers is Bird. He is greeted by Admiral Cruisins, who has landed with the shore party. There is a brief pause for the dedication of Little America number 4. Then the expedition swings swiftly into high gear. Off to the Rockefeller Mountains roars a caravan of alligators on a test run, speeding like snow whippets down a flat track of the ice shelf. On the airfield, the big planes are prepared for their first mission. While equipment is carefully installed, the flight leaders get a briefing from the expedition chief. JATO takeoffs speed the giant craft into the air. Carry out the greatest feat of exploration in polar history, the aerial mapping of 175,000 square miles of unexplored territory. On this most photographed of expeditions, cameramen are everywhere. This is the best they could shoot in the way of local beauties. Not too bad for a SEAL glamour girl. Hey, babe? The expedition glamour boys, on the other hand, are the members of the underwater demolition team. No, those are not long johns they're wearing, but specially made rubber swimsuits. Their job is to clear away underwater obstructions with dynamite, although this, fortunately, did not prove necessary. Don't be surprised by their eating ice cream. They're the kind of people who love to drink hot toddies in Turkish baths. No, these fearless mermen stop at nothing. Except maybe for an iceberg such as this. Like an unwelcome weekend visitor, this big fellow suddenly slips into the Bay of Whales and comes knocking at the door of Little America. Its unwilling hosts quickly slip their moorings and give their visitor a wide berth. 1,000 miles away, the eastern group has an adventure when Captain Dufek, its commander, while crossing on a line between the USS Brownson and Pine Island, is suddenly pitched into the icy sea, where death by exposure can come in a matter of minutes. A motor whaler daringly fishes him out in a brilliant piece of seamanship. It is not an instant too soon. A little while longer in those terrifyingly icy waters, and Captain Dufek would have been beyond recovery. The great task of sending the mapping planes aloft goes on despite all mishaps. It was on such a mission the expedition's air tragedy occurred. The crash of a mariner and death of 3 of its crew. Whenever the weather allowed, the great bird rose up into the brilliant sky of the midnight sun, soaring over empires of ice, fantastic continents of clouds, as they foraged for aerial pictures, bringing back a treasure rarer than precious metal in their aerial cameras. The work went swiftly, with only a little time to play on skis, or have another round of that endless filibuster with those gentlemen from the deep, deep south. The brief Antarctic summer was drawing to a close. Preparations were hurriedly made for departure. Otherwise, the rapidly forming winter ice would trap the expedition till the next spring. The R-4Ds stayed behind according to plan, but were left uncovered. The Antarctic air, dry and cold, would preserve them indefinitely. As the planes disappeared from view, departing sailors and airmen had their last admiring look. In 2 months, the R-4Ds had outstripped the work of all previous expeditions. Not only had they mapped vast areas hitherto unseen by man, they had more clearly defined the coastline of Antarctica, discovered a new peak, Mount X-Ray, located a great new range of mountains 150 miles from the South Pole, discovered Land O'Lakes, a fantastic snow-free. As Task Force 68 slowly made its hazardous way homeward, it knew that its job had been well done, that men and equipment had come through at high operating efficiency, that the frontiers of the unknown had been pushed back a bit more.